뭐, 왜? 저거. 구우는 파타이. 왜요? It just really wanna know. 왜? 이따가 볼까? 이거는 지금 잠깐만 CNN 좀 보고. 그럼 이따가 보자.
Besides Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck. So from the defense, we're going to hear about the drugs. We're going to hear about the crowd, about the distraction, about the George Floyd's physical condition, his pre-existing heart condition. We're going to hear about things like excited utterance. So I believe you're going to see the defense just throw everything on the wall and see what sticks.
So Natalie, you said one of the biggest failures in the prosecution of George Zimmerman was ignoring race. So how does that apply in this case? Do you feel the prosecution here has made the same mistake?
No, I don't. I think that was in 2013, and I think we were just coming to terms with the racial issue with policing in the United States. Since then, we've seen protests all over the nation, especially during the pandemic, in the last year, that was multiracial. We've seen, the protesters in Oregon, in Portland, all in Chicago, everywhere, and they've been multiracial. So I think, and also video has come a long way. We didn't have any video in the prior cases like Trayvon Martin's case or Michael Brown's case. Now we have video. People can see for themselves. That's one of the things the prosecution talked about in their opening statement, and I think we'll hear a lot about this bouquet of humanity, and those were the words he used, and that's what we saw here. We saw all different races, ages, people who were concerned and tried to stop Derek Chauvin's actions.
Natalie, thank you so much for joining us on.
So you know what? So far, what I heard, I just actually turned on. I didn't really see the pre-existing video, or I didn't really see what happened before. The minute, I actually turned this on at 7:05. It's 19:05. So she said that, you know what, the pre-existing heart conditions or these type of cases were actually never been fully constructed. That means that what we would expect to hear from this closing arguments, especially from the defense side, is like, they would try everything. It's like, they would try, put the jelly out on the wall. That means they would actually, leave nothing to imagination. They would have stopped at nothing. That means that they were going to actually sell whatever arguments that might actually convince the jury before the final deliberation. So that type of a very desperation would be palpable. That's what we normally expect to hear from, especially the defense team, immediately following from the different procedures. This is really the closing argument. Closing argument is both the sides are having one last chance to at least, make their case more convincing and cogent. And this is a final chance to appeal to the jury before they actually step out of the scene. They could at least, make any gestures. Hey, you actually believe our story, right? This is really kind of a moment to at least, make desperate gesture to the jury. So what we expect to hear from the defense team particularly is that they would like to focus on the pre-existing health conditions like, cardiovascular symptoms or heart attack or any type of a certain conditions already actually existing in the body of George Floyd before his death. That would be what is expected in this case. Because, think about it. Because of his pre-existing conditions, he had to experience much intensified suffering. So it's not Derek Chauvin's wrongdoing that eventually led him to death. Probably the already actually existing medical conditions somehow exacerbated the situation like this. So they could actually try everything. That means they would actually try to at least throw everything on the wall. That means they would leave nothing. Das heißt auf Deutsch wirklich alle Hebeln in Bewegung setzen wollte. That means that they want to actually, give a shot at everything, no matter how far-fetched they might be. As long as there would be a shimmer of a hope and a glimmer of a hope, they would actually leave nothing out of imagination. That means they would actually pull no punches. Yeah, they would pull no punches. They would stop in nothing. That's what we actually expect to hear from the defense team particularly. So John Berman's question is, Because you said, we experienced it, and also you said that George and Natalie, you said that George Zimmerman's a case. This is really the case concerning the death of Trayvon Martin back in 2013, but the actual ignorance of race issues was the critical to the acquittal of George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman was eventually exonerated from the death of Trayvon Martin. He was not actually at least convicted for the death of Trayvon Martin. But this type of dismissal of racial issues was critical to his acquittal. So, do you expect to see the revival of the same mistake? Do you really expect to witness the same mistake that could ever change the final verdict? Because, racial issues were not fully taken into account, then this would eventually, literally tip off the scale to change the final consequence. In response to that question, Natalie's answer is very clear. This is no longer 2013. Back then, we might not actually have a sufficient understanding of the sophisticated racial complexities, but we have witnessed last year amazing development. This is really a bouquet of humanity. That means, a bunch of humanity. That means all people from all different walks of life, they at least, demonstrated the milk of humanity, the very best of humanity, to at least understand the racial complexities. And they actually demonstrate their solidarity to stand by African Americans. So we actually, already had gone through, last year's protest in Portland, Oregon, or Chicago. Every corner of the United States witnessed the very manifestation of solidarity to stand by the human rights and dignity of African Americans. That was not exceptional case, but it was really a common ethos that had been beautifully shared by every American citizen, almost every American citizen. That was, what she depicted as a bouquet of humanity. People from all different walks of life literally put down their solidarity. People were standing shoulder to shoulder to at least send out a message to the tone-deaf system. Why can't you actually recognize the humanity behind black faces? This type of consolidated message was really, really prevailing in American society. And the last year, that hit the apex at the zenith of that movement. That's a real bouquet of humanity, what we actually witnessed throughout the last year's protestations, even in the midst of the pandemic crisis. That was really the brilliance of human minds, really. And in addition to that, we now actually have video clips collected from the body cams. When Big Mike Brown was dead in Missouri, more specifically in Ferguson, Missouri, there was no video camera. Unfortunately, the policeman didn't really actually carry a body cam. There was no dash cam or body cam that would actually let us walk through what happened. The final clips that we can only verify the final moment of Mike Brown was that he was inside the small shop when he was shoplifting. That was really the only thing we can actually see. That definitely played a very bad role in terms of building up on a case against this heinous police, right? It was very difficult at the time. And Trayvon Martin, he was a little kid. He was like a 16 or 17, and President Obama once said that if he ever had a son, he would have looked like the Trayvon Martin, right? He was just wearing a hoodie. But, he was just simply putting up on a hoodie, and he was roaming around. But, this, security guy, security janitor named George Zimmerman, he's also Latin American. He thought that Trayvon Martin was really armed, and he would be like criminal, although he didn't really carry any gun. He was completely unarmed. But because of this, presumptuous assumption that was too quick to make him very snappy, So he snapped the gun, unloaded the bullet. That's what happened. Multiple times. No reason to actually at least pull the trigger more than once, if that was only for a threatening purpose, right? Well, these are cases doesn't make any sense at all. Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown. In these two cases, there was no video, because we really need to have a very accurate understanding of what happened immediately before and following from the death of these victims. They're really they're the vehicle for this Black Lives Matter movement, for sure. That's really amazing, because we now actually definitely collect and gather and garner the privy information. All right, that would be otherwise unknown to people like you and me, because we were not there. We had never been part of this interactions when these interactions took place, when they took place. But fortunately, because of body cams and dash cams, we can now actually see what truly happened. And this is a really amazing development. In addition to the development of America's public conscience, the moral understanding has been developed. As more people are aware of the situation with accuracy, it's really like correlation. As more people are getting conscious and cognizant of what's happening, then their moral probity is also getting improved. They're becoming awakened, conscious and consciousness. They're actually going in tandem. Indeed, in this case, people are getting awakened, and they are becoming more and more devoted to morality, right? This is a really amazing case, I think. Yeah. Her name is Natalie. She's a civil rights defense lawyer and civil rights activist. But she is not really part of this case. I just actually turned the TV on, so I have no additional information. That's all I heard. Right? Yeah. This cop wasn't really crazy who killed Mike Brown, because he was a fugitive technically, because he was under suspicion of having committed a shoplifting. The only video clip we can obtain concerning the Mike Brown case, Big Mike case, was he's stealing something, pilfering something, right, inside the shop. That's really it. That, it definitely would have intensified and prejudiced and bias against black criminality. This would be, incriminating against the victim, right? If that means, the defense lawyer, how many times the defense lawyer of this cop who pulled the trigger against Mike Brown would have played this video inside the courtroom. Hey, look at this. Mike Brown is not really that, innocent young guy who was just actually shot to death. Look at this. He's stealing something. He's been actually on the run. He has no sense of moralities. He has no sense of moral consciousness, probably. Like, this kind of argument would be built up against Big Mike. That's really, really acceptable. And, I think, not really morally acceptable. What I say is, that would be very expected from the defense lawyer who desperately wanted to pull no punches against or from Mike Brown. Because, he was in the first place a deeply troubled youngster who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's really the reason why he was killed. Like, this kind of argument would be expected equally from the defense team of Derek Chauvin, because they also silenced Derek Chauvin. I think, it was not really, decided by Derek Chauvin's volition. There must have been a certain consultation that, right, he's been following different orders given by his defense lawyers, right? Hey, why don't you actually, take the fifth? Why don't you actually remain silent? We'll take care of things. The more you actually, open up your mouth to be, when you are actually, the more you open up your mouth when you are being grilled by prosecutors, then you could actually, reveal your vulnerability. Like, It's really, really unfortunate. We could have actually never hear any word, not even as a word of atonement from Derek Chauvin, right? It's a very sad, his defense team has been constantly sticking to this, common sense issue. He just followed all the guidelines given by the police in a playbook. Or he was very much devoted to a code of conduct demanded from any cops. Now that's really, really interesting. Yeah, a bouquet of humanity here means it's similar to milk of humanity. The very best of humanity from all different walks of life. Doesn't matter what type of complexion you have, what type of educational backgrounds you have, how wealthy you are. We're all equally sharing this common factor called a sense of sympathy, allowing us to empathize with other people, feeling sorry for their tragedy. That's exactly what we witnessed throughout the last year's mass protestations, right? And that's what has been said. It's very easy. Yeah, Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, Illinois. These are really just, 2 cities mentioned here, but we have definitely more.